I'm John Heilemann.
And I'm Mark Halperin. With all due respect to Bill O'Reilly, this is a no-spin zone. Hey, no. Good afternoon, and TGI, not quite tax day yet. We're here at the Drivers Village in Cicero, New York, just outside Syracuse, where a little while ago we interviewed Senator Ted Cruz. We're going to show you that conversation a little bit later in the program. But first, Bernie Sanders' Hail Mary. Just days before the Empire State primary next Tuesday, Sanders took a red-eye flight last night after he debated Hillary Clinton, and he went to Rome, Italy, where he delivered a 15-minute speech on a, quote, moral economy to something called the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences in Vatican City. Playing off the trip, Sanders also annotated a speech by Pope Francis, and he had that published on the Washington Post website today. But after making the over 4,000-mile one-way trek, Sanders is going to leave Vatican City tomorrow without, at this point, any expectation that he will meet directly with the Pope. John, you and I have both been confused since this trip got announced about why it made sense for Bernie Sanders to leave New York and go to Rome with the primary approaching. So now that the trip is basically in the can, was it worth it?
We'll court the abuse of all the Bernie bots and everyone who loves Bernie Sanders by saying, after today, having viewed all of his activities and seen the coverage, it still doesn't make sense that he went to Rome. He got some decent play. He was on cable during the day. Obviously, this stuff amplifies his message. He was able to go to a different place and make the argument to world leaders rather than merely making the same argument again on the stump here. But I have to say, given where he stands right now in this New York race, it would have been better for him to find a place called Rome, New York, rather than going to Rome, Italy.
This campaign has done great at big rallies. They have not been very sophisticated at the stagecraft of politics. They just haven't, in part because the candidate resists it. I thought they might have some secret reason why this trip was good.
The Pope was going to show up.
Maybe. But I think what they said was true. Bernie Sanders wanted to go.
Right.
He thought it was an honor to be included.
Right.
He justified being away for 40 hours. Right. You know, Hillary Clinton goes to California for 40 hours to fundraise.
She's ahead. She's ahead. She's ahead by 200 pledged delegates, and she's ahead by double digits in this state.
And he could have done something to define his performance in debate last night, which we'll talk about, which is somewhat lackluster. Right. Instead, he left. He got some coverage, but man, it makes no more sense to me than it did before. I predicted it was going to be canceled. It might as well have been.
I really want to just clarify this point for anybody, because I do occasionally get asked this question: why do we not criticize, or why do I not criticize Hillary Clinton for going to California for a fundraiser with George Clooney? I don't think there's anything wrong with Bernie Sanders going to Rome. I don't think there's anything wrong with her going to a fundraising. It's just for political effect. What is the political consequence? And in her case, she can afford to leave a state when she's ahead by double digits and ahead by 200
and she needs
plus
the money.
Delegates. And she needs the money, but she's ahead. He's the one who has to win big delegate, has to score big delegate.
If he doesn't win, he loses.
Right, correct. He has to win big if he's going to catch up. This is not a place where he can afford, in one of the richest delegate states in the whole contest, to lose, and lose potentially badly.
And the guy has incredible stamina, but I cannot believe he's going to come back fresh as a daisy in a 40-hour turnaround, Rome and back.
All right. He also took his whole family with him, which I think also, I know the bell just went off, but to your point about this being a personal thing, the fact that his family, all those people went with him, I think it really was just a meaningful thing for him.
You know what it was? A Roman holiday.
All right. So about last night, in easily the most caustic, contentious, and personally confrontational Democratic debate of the whole presidential cycle, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton both left the Brooklyn Navy Yard debate bruised but unbloodied. Both had their moments, and while the raucous crowd was more loudly pro-Sanders than pro-Clinton, the Vermont senator failed to capitalize on some of Hillary Clinton's more evasive answers. Take a look and see for yourself.
Secretary Clinton, the question was about the transcripts of the speeches to Goldman Sachs. Why not release them?
I have said, look, there are certain expectations when you run for president. This is a new one. And I've said, if everybody agrees to do it, because there are speeches for money on the other side, I know that.
Do you regret your advocacy for the crime bill?
Well, look, I supported the crime bill. My husband has apologized. He was the president who actually signed it. Senator Sanders voted for it. I'm sorry for the consequences that were unintended and that have had a very unfortunate impact on people's lives.
Are you prepared to lift the cap on taxable income, which currently stands at $118,500? Yes or no, would you lift the cap?
I have said repeatedly, Wolf, I am going to make the wealthy pay into Social Security to extend the Social Security Trust Fund. That is one way. If that is the way that we pursue, I will follow that.
Interesting comment, but you didn't answer the question.
I did. If that's
no,
the
you
way
didn't.
yes, I did.
Can I answer?
I did answer the
please?
Well,
Can
don't
think I
put
have
words
the
into my
Wolf?
mouth and say
Do I not?
something that's not
Go ahead,
accurate.
Senator.
All right.
So, Mark, my question for you, either in the Democratic race or more broadly, did the debate last night change anything, and if so, what?
Three things. One, it eliminated Bernie Sanders' last chance to change the contours of the New York primary by failing to change the contours in his last chance. Two, it gave, I think, the Clinton people confidence that he's got no tricks up his sleeve. If he had any tricks up his sleeve that he was going to play, he would have done it. And three, it gave Republicans a lot of confidence that Hillary Clinton, as strong as she is a debater in some ways, faced with tough questions, gives evasive answers. Sanders' biggest failing last night was a failure to take advantage of those moments that we showed. A skilled debater, and Donald Trump and Ted Cruz are pretty skilled in some ways as debaters.
Different ways.
In different ways.
Yeah.
Will take advantage of what critics would call Clintonian moments.
Yeah, I'll say two other things. Given the level of rancor on stage, I think it basically guaranteed that we are not going to have any more Democratic debates. And Hillary Clinton will not, I think, agree to another debate. There's been some discussion of that going down. After last night, I don't think anybody, certainly on the Clinton side, is going to want to see that happen again. And the second thing, I think, is that it is clear, there's an open debate about how easy it's going to be to knit this party back together. Last night, I think, made it harder to put the Democratic Party back together. Not impossible by any means, but it makes it harder. And the truth is that Bernie Sanders, though he was not great last night, the things that he's doing, the things that he's saying are taking a toll on her. There's some Gallup polling now. She's down to 66% favorability among Democrats. 3 in 10 Democrats saying they dislike her now. 6 months ago, 9 months ago, she had an 85, almost 90% approval rating with Democrats. That is a problem for her as she goes forward and has to have Democratic enthusiasm if she's the nominee.
And if those numbers stand, if people have doubts about her trustworthiness, about whether she's a straightforward person. She has a debate moment like that in a general election, and the Republican steps in and gives a zinger, creates a moment. It could really be a big thing in the election.
Agree.
All right. Here's another example of Bernie Sanders pulling his punches. Today, his campaign announced 2 new TV ads. They're going to begin airing in the coming days. One's for New York, focuses on Wall Street contributions and paid speeches to politicians. Another is running in California, and it touts Sanders' ability to raise money through small donations rather than from fat cat donations. Neither spot mentions anyone by name. Both are pretty clearly aimed, though, at Hillary Clinton. So, John, the Sanders campaign finally puts on ads some are describing as tough, but why is he still holding back? If he's going negative, why not go negative and name her?
There's an actual answer to this question, and I have it for you. The answer is that the candidate is insisting on drawing this line. People around him would happily like to attack Hillary Clinton by name, but he has drawn a line personally and said it's fine to characterize, but I'm not going to name her in these ads. I think it's a distinction without a difference, and I think it's not doing him any good politically. I think it's a ridiculous distinction that gains him nothing politically or gets him anywhere with the press. But that is what the candidate has told his people. This is a line that he wants to stick to for whatever reason.
He's done it throughout his career. He should say to them, or they should say to him, if that's the way you want it, we should donate the money to charity.
Right.
Because they're giving it to television stations to no effect. It's just not the way negative ads work.
Or we should go back to doing issues-based ads and name her,
or run
do whatever.
The Simon and Garfunkel ad.
Right. Or there are a million things you could do. But if you're going to do a negative ad that is basically saying Hillary Clinton but not saying her name, you might as well say her name because it's not fooling anyone, and you're not getting any points, I think, for virtue by going down this path. But again, we know candidates who do this. They get an E-Day fix about something that makes a difference, and for most of us can't see why it's meaningful, but they've decided it's meaningful, and they will not budge. And you know Sanders is stubborn.
Bernie Sanders will probably not be the nominee. He might be, but he probably won't be. He's been a great candidate.
Yep.
Building crowds, inspiring people. His ability to oversee an ad campaign, with the exception of the positive ads,
yes,
Simon and Garfunkel ad, his ability to debate, you just can't beat a Clinton as an underdog pulling your punches.
Well, and to be clear, the creative is really good. I mean, the ad makers are making good ads. Yeah. It's just that they're not going as far as they could go for maximum effect. All right. We have a quick correction on the show yesterday. While talking about controversies surrounding Bernie Sanders' surrogates, I made a comment. I said that Susan Sarandon had said that she would rather vote for Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton. That was not correct. What Sarandon actually said that caused a commotion was that she wasn't sure she could vote for Clinton and that Donald Trump might be more likely to usher in a revolution. She likes the idea of a revolution. She later tweeted a clarification that she would never vote for Trump. So mea culpa, that's on me. Coming up, our interview with Ted Cruz. But first, Donald Trump, like you've never read him before, syntactically demure, epithet-free, and without an exclamation point in sight. After this.
Most of the political world was focused on that Democratic debate last night. The Wall Street Journal, though, made a little bit of a splash by publishing a traditional op-ed piece by Donald J. Trump billionaire trying to convince voters that his party's nomination rules for president put GOP elites ahead of American families. Trump writes in the piece, quote, "How have we gotten to the point where politicians defend a rigged delegate selection process with more passion than they ever have defended America's borders?" That's the end of the quote. In response to Trump's ongoing criticism of the delegate selection process, the Republican Party's national committee released a memo early this morning defending the freedom of states to select their own delegate processes. And the party chairman, Reince Priebus, offered this rebuttal to Trump in an interview with NBC's Today.
Over 60,000 people a month ago in Colorado voted at their precinct level. Then they went to the county level. Then they went to the congressional district level. All the while, by the way, Willie, all the candidates competed with surrogates in the system without complaining, by the way, the whole way through for a month. So I think it's a little too late to complain after the fact that a particular state's process isn't something that you like.
So we know why Donald Trump is driving this line of rhetoric about the system being unfair. What is Reince Priebus and the RNC? What did they get out of having this fight with Donald Trump?
Well, in the end, if Reince Priebus ends up having to take over this convention, which he may, and if this convention ends up producing a nominee who is not Donald Trump, or a nominee who comes in not only with not a majority, but even now without a plurality, the integrity of the system is going to be crucial to the long-term political task ahead for the Republican Party of knitting the party back together, as the Democrats will have to in a different way. So I think Priebus is in the same way Trump is laying down a predicate by attacking the system. Priebus is now laying down a predicate by defending the system.
I think that's part of it. I think also Reince Priebus and his team want to stay running the RNC no matter who the nominee is. They want to throw history out because it is a matter of practice, not law or policy, that the RNC basically and the DNC give up and hand over the reins to the nominee, the de facto nominee. 4 years ago, Mitt Romney was taking over the RNC at this point. Priebus wants to stay. He wants to be chairman and independent and keep his staff. And I think they're basically, if Trump fires at them, they want to prove they're tough guys and gals and can fire back and say, our system's great, leave our system alone.
Well, right. And, look, I mean, there's now two factions broadly in the Republican Party. There's the Trump fans, and then there's the Never Trump coalition. People are at various levels of extremity on that in the Never Trump coalition. But if you're Priebus and you want to do what you're suggesting, which I think is probably right, you don't want to become the spokesman for the Never Trump cause, but you have to convince the Never Trump cause that you are as you say, a tough guy, that you are a player, that you are significant, and that you are going to defend the system by which they will win. If they are going to win, that's the system by which they're going to win.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary spectacle. The likeliest nominee is basically saying the party whose nominee I want to be has rules that are corrupt. The RNC has to defend their brand. This is their brand.
And no stranger, of course, than the spectacle, as we saw before, of the previous Republican nominee attacking the frontrunner of the party in the subsequent cycle. We saw that before. A lot of weird stuff this year. All right. That was the substance, all right, on that Trump op-ed. Now we're going to talk about the style. The most interesting thing about the Wall Street Journal op-ed that Trump wrote was how little it resembled in style or substance the written form that we're most familiar with when it comes to Trump. His patented, now iconic Twitter outbursts. Instead of insulting nicknames, inflammatory adjectives, exclamatory exclamation points, and frequent typos, we were treated to a workmanlike, basically level-headed, modestly punctuated op-ed, the kind of thing any old presidential candidate would publish under his name. Complete with sentences like the following, quote, My campaign will, of course, battle for every last delegate. We will work within the system that exists now while fighting to have it reformed in the future. But we will do it the right way. My campaign will seek maximum transparency, maximum representation, and maximum voter participation. We will run a campaign based on empowering voters, not sidelining them, end quote. Mark, who is this rather conventional prose stylist, and what has he done with the Donald? And more importantly, what is the meaning of this new polished Donald Trump?
As op-eds by candidates often go straight and go, this one was actually relatively good.
Yeah,
it had some interesting writing in it, again, compared to a tweet. I think that this is the influence of the new guard, maybe the influence of his family, and it is a recognition that he can make powerful arguments with a different format on a platform which is quite prestigious. And I believe that Donald Trump, to become president, must win over a lot of the business community. Been talking about this a lot lately. Hillary Clinton, like her husband, like Barack Obama, has the potential to be the candidate of a lot of big business, some small business. Trump wants to reach out and basically argue, stylistically, I can be an adult. I can be a serious person. I can make a persuasive argument that doesn't end with the word sad exclamation point.
Also interesting in the context of the kind of the analysis of what's going on in Murdoch world, right? If you think about the Megyn Kelly tete-a-tete, you think about the endorsement of the New York Post, and then you think the Wall Street Journal op-ed page opening up and allowing Donald Trump to make its argument there, suggests that something is going on in terms of how greater Murdochlandia, maybe Rupert Murdoch himself, almost certainly, is starting to think about Trump and whether they want to try to make some kind of peace with him because they think he might be the nominee and they don't want to be at war with the eventual Republican nominee.
It might be a short-term thing. I have no repertorial insight into Rupert Murdoch on this, but I will say,
but it's not a coincidence.
It would not
These
be
three things
it would
are all
not be
happening.
unusual for News Corp to make the following judgment. Trump's probably going to be the nominee.
Yep.
He could, under some fluke from their point of view, get elected.
Yeah.
Why not, in the short term, do some nice stuff?
And that's the kind of thing that Rupert Murdoch does all the time, not just in this country, but abroad. He's done it for years and years. All right, coming up, our interview with Senator Ted Cruz. We'll be right back with that. Today we followed Ted Cruz up here to Cicero, New York, which is not that far from Syracuse. In between campaign stop, Cruz sat down with us here at Drivers Village, which is a giant automotive mall, and we talked a little politics, starting out with his discussion of his Empire State strategy.
New York is Donald's home state. You would expect Donald to do well in his home state. The numbers suggest that he will. And you know, I think if Donald does anything other than win it with substantially more than 50%, I think it will be perceived as a real loss for him. We're competing here. We're trying to earn as many delegates as we can, and we're competing on the ground. We're getting some support. But, you know, our campaign is very much a national campaign. Right. You know, you look at the last 3 weeks, we've had an amazing 3 weeks. We've won 11 elections in a row in 4 different states, and I think that momentum is continuing nationwide.
So that's a concession, basically. You don't expect to win this state. You're competing here for delegates. What would be a success for you here? What would that mean?
Listen, we welcome every delegate we can earn. But, you know, I will note, when Donald came to the state of Texas, we walloped him in my home state. I mean, any serious candidate ought to be able to win their home state, and I think Donald is likely to do well, but I'm encouraged by the support we're seeing. You know, just today, the New York Sun endorsed our campaign, and it endorsed me as the strongest constitutionalist in the race, as the person you can trust to defend the Bill of Rights, and also the strongest commander-in-chief who understands that we've got to be active, standing by our friends and allies like the nation of Israel, and standing up to radical Islamic terrorism.
Let's talk about Cleveland. Your path to nomination, as you've in your campaign talked about, is finishing with the second most number of delegates before Cleveland, and then on a subsequent ballot after the first ballot winning. At that point, Donald Trump and his supporters are going to be disappointed. He will have had the most delegates. What do you need? What would you need from him in that scenario? What would you expect from him to help unify the party if you get your way? Come in with the second most, leave as the nominee.
Well, listen, it's unclear what exactly is going to happen, but I think it is getting more and more likely with each passing day that we're headed to a contested convention. Now, if that happens, that means I'll come in with a ton of delegates. Donald will come in with a ton of delegates.
But with more.
Neither of us will have a majority. We'll see how it plays out. That's not necessarily clear. We'll see what the voters decide on that. But regardless, what that means is then in Cleveland, it'll be a battle to see who can earn a majority of the delegates who were elected by the people. And in that contest, I think we will have the significant advantage of being able to assemble and really unite the Republican Party. And that is my focus right now. If we are divided, if we're splintered, if we're fighting amongst ourselves, we can't win. And so our focus is bringing together the Republican Party, uniting. And it's why I'm so encouraged that we're winning election after election. We're seeing that full range of Republicans uniting behind the campaign.
I want to take you to that next step, because I understand the scenario right up to that point. But at that point, you'd have Donald Trump would be disappointed, and he's sort of sent signals. He sort of sent signals that he would at that point say the system was rigged against him. And his supporters, the hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the country who either voted for him or who support him. How do you bring Donald Trump and his supporters in at that point?
Well, listen, I'm not going to predict how Donald would react. The test to winning the nomination is the same as it's been since 1860. The only way to win the nomination is to earn a majority of the delegates elected by the people. And whoever the nominee is, that's what they're going to have to do. I will say, if it ends up, as I think probably will happen at a contested convention, that we earn a majority, it's going to be critically important then to keep the Donald Trump supporters energized and engaged. And it's one of the reasons, frankly, that I think I'm the last man standing against Donald, is because if you look at those supporters, the heart of his campaign demographically has been blue-collar workers, has been the Reagan Democrats. And the only candidate who's competed effectively with him for those voters throughout this primary has been me. In some states, he's won those blue-collar voters. In other states, I've won those blue-collar voters. We tend to be first and second, back and forth. And the issues that energize and excite the Trump voters, illegal immigration, securing the border, keeping this country safe, and bringing jobs back to America, bringing them back from China, back from Mexico, those issues are right at the heart of our campaign. So I believe if I earn a majority of the delegates in Cleveland, that we are going to be able to continue to energize and unite those Trump supporters and get them to come out and vote.
Let me just button this with a short question, short answer. So you think you can reach his supporters and energize them without necessarily his full support for you in Cleveland? Is that you can reach them on your own?
I certainly hope so. Yeah. There's no doubt in a contested convention that's something you naturally worry about, is having divisions in the party. And so we're going to have to work hard at continuing to unite the party. One sign that is encouraging, you look at the 17 Republican candidates who started this race. 5 of them are supporting my campaign now. We've been endorsed by Rick Perry, by Lindsey Graham, by Jeb Bush, by Scott Walker, by Carly Fiorina. I mean, that really is indicative of the Republican Party uniting, and each of those, was fighting vigorously against me, and yet part of the reason we were able to unite the party is in the course of those battles. Our campaign never got personal, never got nasty, never attacked them directly. So we had policy disagreements. We had a healthy primary, but it makes it easier to unite when you do that. Yep. Right. And I hope and believe the same will be true with Donald's supporters if and when we win the nomination.
We'll be right back with more of our interview with Ted Cruz right after these words from our sponsors.
We're back, part 2 now of our interview with Senator Ted Cruz here at Drivers Village in Cicero, New York, right outside of Syracuse.
It has gotten nasty between you two, and a lot emanating from Mr. Trump, right? He calls you Lion Ted every single day. Yeah. He retweeted a picture of your wife that was clearly meant to insult her, right? So just at the human level, like last night, did you talk to him?
I didn't see him last night, so he was gone by the time I came down. So I certainly would have talked to him.
So, but is this all just, is this all just like political theater, or on some level, like normal human beings, like who are not running for president? If somebody treated me like that, I would never be friends with them again. There's no way we'd be allies ever again. I'd be offended for the rest of my life. Will you guys? Is that what this? Is there a human level? Can this be fixed?
Well, listen. From my side, I try very hard not to take it personally. People behave. There's the old adage of the frog and the scorpion, and the frog giving the scorpion across the river, and the scorpion stings him, and as the frog is sinking, he asks the scorpion, why did you sting me? Now we both shall die. The scorpion says, because it's my nature. Right. People behave according to their nature. Right. I understand. Donald lashes out. He attacks when he's scared, when he's losing. Whenever we beat him in an election, that's when Donald gets particularly nasty. And I recognize that. Look, we're all human beings. We all have natural human emotions. Right. The focus at the end of the day, it's not on Donald, it's not on me. The focus on the end of the day is solving the problems in this country. My focus is jobs and economic growth. I think that's the focus of people in New York. They want to see high-paying jobs back in America.
But just as two guys, right? Could you be allies again? Would he need to ask your forgiveness? I mean, again, I would not be friends with someone who did not at least ask my forgiveness if he treated my wife that way.
Lion John.
Or called me Lion John every day.
Well, listen, I do think wives and children, our spouses and family should be off limits. That has no place in politics. And I was grateful that Donald said it was a mistake to do that. I hope it's a mistake that doesn't occur again. That would be a good improvement. My focus, this should not be personal. It's not about him. It's not about me. It's about the country. It's about who has real solutions. Millions of Americans are hurting. Wages have stagnated for over a decade. And so what I'm focused on every day is how do we bring manufacturing jobs back to New York? How do we see wages rise? How do we see young people coming out of school with job offers? And so what I focus on every day is lifting the burden of Washington on small businesses, repealing Obamacare, passing a simple flat tax, pulling back the regulators that are killing small businesses, stopping amnesty and ending sanctuary cities. Those are the solutions we need to the real problems, and it's why we're getting so much support across the country.
Flat tax you mentioned. Are your taxes done? Have you signed them yet?
I am sending in an extension, which I confess we do every year.
Yeah.
So.
Your tax plan is at the centerpiece to some extent of what you've done, but you don't talk about it in a way I find that when I ask voters what you stand for, I don't hear very many people referring to it. Say you were explaining your tax plan to a college junior, freshman. How would you explain it?
Well, sure. It's a simple flat tax. So for a typical family of four, first $36,000 you earn, you pay nothing, zero. No income tax, no payroll tax. Above $36,000 for each additional dollar you earn, everyone pays the same simple flat 10% tax. A gazillionaire pays the same tax rate as his secretary. No longer does the gazillionaire pay a lower effective tax rate. Then on the business side, we abolish the corporate income tax. We abolish the Obamacare taxes. We abolish the payroll taxes, which are the biggest taxes most working men and women pay. And we abolish the death tax, which is cruel and unfair to farmers and ranchers and small businesses. And we replace all of those with a 16% business flat tax that's fair and uniform, no longer to giant corporations with tons of accountants pay nothing while small businesses get hammered. And under this simple flat tax, every American, you'll fill out your taxes on a postcard. You can actually see the postcard on our website, tedcruz.org. You can fill out your taxes on a smartphone. And we abolish the IRS. And that is a message, particularly today. Today is tax day. We got an extension till Monday this year.
Right.
But people are thinking about the burdens of Washington, and especially with the Obama IRS, which has been politicized, it's been corrupt, it has targeted citizens based on their First Amendment rights. It is time to end the corrupt agency that is the IRS, and my simple flat tax will produce 4.9 million new jobs, will raise wages for Americans across this country. The average family over 10 years will have an additional $7,600 in take-home pay. That's real money for people who are struggling.
Lots of people, according to your calculations, pay less. Would any business or individual pay more under your plan?
Oh, look, it's certainly possible. I mean, I haven't done the taxes of every individual in America. What I can tell you is the projections show that every single income level sees an increase in after-tax income of at least double digits. 14% is the lowest increase, and that was when we were designing it.
Right.
I worked very closely with Art Laffer, who was the chief economic advisor to Ronald Reagan. And that was one of the things I was looking for in designing it, is it had to help everyone, and it had to produce growth. The key to every problem we've got, whether it's unemployment, whether it's the deficit, whether it's strengthening and preserving Social Security and Medicare, whether it's rebuilding the military.
Need faster growth.
It's got to be growth. And so this tax plan is designed to turbocharge growth so that small businesses take off, and in particular, so manufacturing jobs come back to America, back from China, back from Mexico, and back to the state of New York.
My guess is you're going to say no, but do you have any idea how much less the Cruz family would pay under your plan?
I have no idea. I have not run those numbers.
Okay.
Now, I believe it's true you're a country music fan.
I am, although not terribly expert.
More
but
of a country fan than a rock and roll fan, right?
I used to be a rock and roll fan. I still like classic rock.
Right. Okay. So classic rock. So I know you're not Chris Christie, but you're a Bruce Springsteen fan. You like Bruce Springsteen?
Oh, I enjoy Springsteen. I'm not a particularly.
You're not a Bruce head. You don't travel around, but you like him, right? So Bruce Springsteen the other day announced that they weren't going to play in North Carolina because of the bathroom law there, right? So when you hear that an artist doing something like that, do you think that's legitimate? Do you think it's disrespectful? What does it make you think about Bruce Springsteen?
Oh, listen, Bruce and everyone else has a free speech right. If he disagrees with something, he has a right not to travel there. I do think an awful lot of Hollywood and entertainment latches on to what's ever politically correct and popular at the given moment. And my view, I'm a constitutionalist, and states have rights to pass laws consistent with the values of their citizens. And it may well be that the citizens of North Carolina will make different judgments than the citizens of New York, and that's how our Constitution operates.
Right, but you don't feel sympathy or you don't feel disgust. It's like when you hear not what they have the right to do. I know what your view is they have the right to do, but you think
he's entitled to
thumbs up or thumbs down.
He's entitled to be a liberal, and most rock and rollers, most of Hollywood, they're liberals. That's their entire culture, and frankly, it's the easy thing to be a liberal. Everyone in the entertainment field, it's the chic, hip thing to do. You don't often see rock and rollers or movie stars addressing the fact that in the last 7 years under the Obama economy, income inequality has grown, that the rich have gotten richer and those who are struggling have gotten worse off. You don't often see the entertainment industry or Hollywood addressing the fact that we've abandoned Israel and that radical Islamic terrorism is growing like crazy, and this president, and Hillary Clinton for that matter, refuses even to acknowledge it, much less to do what's needed to defeat it.
We got to let you go. My spidey sense says we're about to make some news. You're a careful lawyer. Is it the case that you have started or you're about to start vetting potential running mates?
Look, any responsible presidential campaign will begin looking at potential vice presidential nominees. We're less than 100 days away from the convention, and so you've got to do that. And so we're in the process of assessing, and I will say, it really is a nice situation on the Republican side because there are an abundance of good choices. You start with 17 candidates who ran. We've got terrific governors.
But you got to vet them. You got to make sure they pass all the background. I'm right that you're about to start that process, right?
We are in the process of examining potential vice presidential nominees. But you know what? There isn't going to be a vice presidential nominee until we win the nomination. So our focus is earning the votes from the people to earn delegates to go to Cleveland.
But then you got to be ready. If you win the nomination the second or third day, you want to pick somebody at the convention. They got to be vetted by then.
Yeah, no, this is going to go on a fast and accelerated time frame.
Our thanks to Senator Ted Cruz. But that interview is not all we did with Senator Cruz. After our talk, we got the chance to foos with Cruz, foosball that is. You can catch our epic face-off with the senator and his aide, Bruce Redden, on this program on Monday. Can't tip the results, but you'll want to see it. Up next, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of New York politics with a couple of folks here in the Syracuse area right after this.
We have pulled up two chairs to talk to two chairs from upstate New York. Joining us now is the co-chair of Donald Trump's New York leadership team and the chairman of the, a terrible time pronouncing this. Here we go. Onondaga. Onondaga County Republican Party, Tom Dadey, and then the co-chair of Hillary Clinton's New York leadership team and Syracuse Mayor Stephanie Miner. That's so much easier.
It is.
My God, you're much more difficult.
Dadey. It's all right.
Dadey. All right. I can't do the county and I can't do your name. Donald Trump's going to win the state, right?
He is.
Tell me about what we understand that Donald Trump is a New York City phenomenon.
Right.
What's the Donald Trump upstate New York phenomenon?
Well, he was considering running for governor a couple of years back, and I was part of a small group that tried to recruit him to do that, number one. Number two, upstate has struggled and the mayor can attest to this, has struggled for decades with job loss, population loss, high taxes, and that's a message that is gravitating and getting Donald Trump a lot of support here in upstate New York.
Talk about Hillary Clinton. She obviously famously When she ran for Senate, she came up here, and this was part of how she won the Senate the first time when she first came around. What has there been any kind of significant ebbing? She had to reintroduce herself to this part of the world, having been not a New York politician for a decade?
No, I don't think so. She was here 2 weeks ago on a Friday right before the Final Four when we made our run, both the men's and women's team. Had a great day, lots of positive feedback. People were anxious and hopeful and grateful that she had the opportunity to come back because we knew her as a senator, and she started her listening tour here, and that was the kind of exposure that we all started with her. And then she was a very hands-on senator. She was a workhorse, not a show horse, and the people up here had firsthand experience with that.
You two talk amongst yourselves on this topic. We've had years now of politicians in both parties trying to revitalize the economy in this part of the state. What is left to be tried that hasn't been tried?
Well, look, I think it's all about education. We have gone into a global marketplace. You have to compete not just against the South or the West. You got to compete against China and Mexico. And the way you do that and keep a quality of life is having innovation, high-skilled engineers, people who are very smart and can problem solve. And too many politicians have been thinking about doing it with just quick one-shot answers. Just cut taxes or just, give a development break. You need to have a more sustainable approach to economic development.
And I think that's one reason why Donald Trump is called Wildfire is because he is a strong leader. He's built a tremendous company. He employs a lot of people, and jobs and taxes are two big issues here in upstate New York because for decades it's been going in the wrong direction.
You know any Republicans who are going to support Hillary Clinton in a general election?
I do not know any Republicans.
You know any Democrats who are going to support Donald Trump in a general election?
I don't, but I know Republicans who are going to support Hillary Clinton, particularly women. A lot of women, Republicans, are saying they're going to support Hillary Clinton in November, obviously.
Well, I think we're going to have a lot of crossover support because you talk to the common person on the street, whether they're a rank-and-file union person or somebody who's a former Reagan Democrat, they are just frustrated with what has gone on. And I think one of the reasons why Trump is doing so well is because for decades we've been sending the same old people to Washington and nothing is getting done. And when they see Donald Trump come to town or they see the organization that he's built, they know that he can get results, and that's what they expect to happen when he goes to Washington, D.C.
Look, I agree with Tom. I know lots of people who are supporting Donald Trump, and their primary emotion is frustration. And you almost can't talk to them beyond that frustration. They're frustrated folks in just leadership across the board. And so when you try to say to them, well, what about the solutions? They don't want to hear that. They just say, we want to have somebody who goes in there and just blows it all up.
And people are frustrated because I think that's one of the reasons why you're seeing Bernie Sanders do so well in Hillary Clinton's adopted home state.
So again, you guys have easy jobs in some sense politically right now. You both had the candidates that you're representing were the favorites in the state, that they're going to probably win the state. Now, in a general election, let's assume Donald Trump's the nominee and Hillary Clinton's the nominee.
That's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
I want you again to talk amongst yourselves because presumably New York will be they're two New Yorkers competing for the votes of the state. Make the argument for why this part of the world should favor Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton, not over the other Republicans.
Well, first of all, Donald Trump was born and raised here in New York. He's born in Queens. He'll do very well in New York City. He doesn't need to win New York City. He just needs to do better than our former statewide candidates, as Republicans have done. He's going to do very well on Long Island. He's going to do very well in the suburbs, and he's going to have a lot of support in upstate New York because there's been a lot of issues over the last couple of years that there's a reason why there's a lot of voter frustration. He is going to make it a very competitive race. He's going to put New York in play in a general election in November if it's Donald versus Hillary.
Why is he wrong?
I think it's one word, substance. That when you start voting for President of the United States, that's a very personal vote, and people are putting their livelihoods and their families and their children's livelihoods. They want to have somebody who is steady, who knows substance, who works hard, and has already talked about policy and implemented those policies.
Well, and Donald Trump has a very successful record of building a company and creating jobs. And that's what we need here in upstate New York. And that's why he is going to do so well in upstate New York.
We got less than 30 seconds. Are you both proud that two of the leading presidential candidates are New Yorkers? Are you both proud of that?
Well, look, I'm proud to be supporting Hillary Clinton.
You got pride in the fact that the leading Republican candidate's a New Yorker, too, or none?
Well, wasn't Hillary from Arkansas or Illinois?
Well, you know what?
I'm very proud
no
to be
state
supporting.
proud in that. No state pride in that.
I have to tell you, seeing the things that Donald Trump has said, the way he said it has not made me feel proud at all.
Real quick, yes or no? State pride?
I'm very happy that he is. That's why I supported him.
Do you have pride that Hillary Clinton and other New Yorkers are the leading
She's not really a New Yorker.
Oh, my goodness. All right.
Okay, all right. Say your last name again.
Tom Dadey.
Dadey, Tom
Yes,
Dadey.
yes.
Thank you, Mayor Minor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Great to meet you both.
Thanks
and great
for
to have
coming.
you on. When we come back, we'll give you the blow-by-blow of what happened in the ring last night at the Brouhaha in Brooklyn.
We in the media love to draw comparisons between politics and pugilism. That's why we sometimes say candidates sparred at a debate or suffered a beatdown. With everyone calling last night's prize fight the Brooklyn Brawl, we thought we'd send our men, Griffin Hammond and Matt Negrin, to the fabled Church Street boxing gym to talk to some true New York brawlers to see the latest Democratic debate through their eyes.
I think they're evenly matched.
Both of them landed punches. Who won is a different story.
Bernie kept coming back. You didn't answer the questions.
They both got a few shots in. I thought Bernie took it by a little bit.
The Brooklyn Brawl.
Brawl in Brooklyn? Brooklyn Brawl.
It was sort of a Brooklyn brawl.
A bare knuckle brawl.
South Bronx style, baby. Come on.
Man, it just looked like a sparring session, toe-to-toe brawl, just right there, and the person's hitting you, you have no other option but to rock back.
So you saw Hillary just sticking him, and then he would try to come through, and then she just bang, bang, bang again.
When asked, he could not explain how that would be done.
Just don't let her dominate you. Don't let her jump all over your words when you're trying to respond. And that's what she's doing. She's just like trying to pound him, pound him, pound him. But then he comes back with a qualified response.
I am sure a lot of people are very surprised to learn that you supported raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
And it's just like, oh, one big solid right.
I was watching it and just thinking, like, this is just politics, boxing without gloves. They were throwing punches back and forth. They were throwing punches.
Now, Secretary Clinton was busy giving speeches to Goldman Sachs for $225,000 a speech.
Senator Sanders did call me unqualified.
You're going to hit me and I'm going to hit you back. There was a lot of raised voices, a lot of yelling.
Secretary,
in New York or Los Angeles
Secretary,
or
the
Seattle.
viewers.
Let's do it.
And that's what it is in boxing. Who's going to dominate the time and get the right hits in before the round is over?
They were kind of going low blows a little bit. It was one of those dirty fights. It wasn't as friendly as in the past.
This is a phony attack that is designed to raise questions when there is no evidence or support.
Some of those jabs that Hillary were doing were just little pats, you know, trying to make points, but not really doing any damage.
Maybe the next one they might do a little Muhammad Ali flow, like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Thanks to Griffin Hammond and Matt Negrin, and we'll be right back with some late night comedy stylings after this. Well, Donald Trump test drives that new Mr. Serious strategy we talked about earlier in the show with his Wall Street Journal op-ed. His remaining Republican rivals are taking a sometimes goofier route to try to get the nomination. Both Ted Cruz and John Kasich appeared on late night TV Thursday. Kasich was on with the great Seth Meyers. Cruz on The Tonight Show starring the Jimmy Fallon. Here are some of their comedy stylings.
Are you watching the Democratic debate?
Nope. I'm watching The Princess Bride for the 843rd time.
Inconceivable.
I am a blue-collar guy. I'm like a person that is frustrated about things in life. I mean, my father carried mail on his back. His father was a coal miner. My mother's mother couldn't speak English.
Because it's illegal if you take somebody else's mail.
Yeah, he did. Okay. He did. That's a good point. I never asked him if he actually
didn't work there,
that.
that's a problem. Yeah, that's a felony.
All right, both those guys have done late night before, but how do you think their comedy chops are developing?
Well, like everyone expects for John Kasich to be pretty good at this because he's a goofy guy. His jokes are terrible, but he's good on it. Everyone is surprised, but we're not surprised because we know Ted Cruz has a sense of humor, and he showed he did pretty well last night.
Yeah, I think they're both actually really funny privately, and they're both not nervous on those shows. I think that's the key. That's the key. You got to be game to do it, and both of them are pretty game. And the Cruz thing, where Fallon played Trump was actually really funny.
Right. It's hard not to be nervous, but they have it down.
Yeah.
All right.
On Monday, you'll get to see a little bit of comedy and competition when we show our foosball face-off with Ted Cruz. You won't want to miss it.
All right, that's enough from you. Head to BloombergPolitics.com right now to read about why we're calling the New York primary the narcissism primary. Coming up on Bloomberg West, Emily Chang is going to sit down with the Huffington Post editor-in-chief, Arianna Huffington. We'll be back on Monday with more from our foosball match with Ted Cruz. Mark's so excited about that, he decided to skip ahead and tease it ahead of when I had a chance to tease it. We won't tell anybody how things went, but it was tough.
It was spirited.
It was spirited. The competition was intense.
And I will say this, we came up with a lot of good nicknames for Ted Cruz.
We did.
A lot of them rhyme with lion.
Some of them are almost Trumpian, I'd say.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz, not a lot of banter, though. Very focused on the competition.
You want to see Eye of the Tiger? Watch Monday's episode.
All right.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Time to say sayonara.